Good morning. This is Anna Imagination with the Healing Garden. It has been an amazing 24 hours. Yesterday morning, I took a step back from the Healing Garden and I did my own work on wealth, money, and that allowed a massive shift in my own comprehension so that I could later step back and really examine the direction I was taking the garden. The garden is a concept I've been working on unknowingly, subconsciously, since I was 12 years old. It started off with some dreams, some ideas, some visions. It was 1992. In 1995, I began studying philosophy, and that led me to psychology. And from there, I went into sociology, Romanology, theology. I studied physics, mathematics, geometry, logic, formal argument, debate. I studied Ayn Rand. Oh my God, did I study Ayn Rand? And it wasn't until 2015 when I started my own healing journey, accumulating all of the knowledge and awareness that I had built over a lifetime. And I was able to, using philosophy, reach a perspective of my healing that was not available in psychology. So when I stepped into a therapist's office, for me, I found it horribly inadequate. My traumas were extraordinary. And I was an anomaly. I should be dead. I should have been on drugs. I should have been cutting. I should have been doing a lot of things that, according to the textbooks, I wasn't doing. And the techniques that were given to me by my therapists, some of them were phenomenal, like cognitive behavioral therapy. But the rest of it, I found it to be emotional flooding, trauma dumping, and actually a very toxic environment for me. So I took my 30 years of information, I accumulated it, and I designed a program suited for my mental health, suited for my traumas. And aside from cognitive behavioral therapy, which I learned was just meditation, I turned toward yoga, tai chi, energy healing, Reiki, manifestation. When I studied manifestation and energy healing, that led me back into Tesla, of all things, and Einstein, physics, an old friend of mine. And I was able to pull all of the information and knowledge that I had accumulated in my life to create the Healing Garden. And it was an 8-year healing journey that finally ended about 8 months ago. It was quite literally almost to the day that my healing concluded and I found peace. And now I'm in this wonderful ship that I built, that I started building when I was 12 years old. And I'm going, what do I do with all this knowledge and information? And the most logical explanation for me was to give it to others, to pass it on. My dream job has always been and will always be to be a philosopher. And needless to say, in the year 2023, I thought there was no need for philosophers. I decided to change that. It has taken me a long time to figure out who I am and what my name is and what my identity is. And when I was done with that program and that project, that goal, the answer that I had was phenomenal for me, but really had no place in the patriarchy. If anything, I was laughed at, ridiculed, mocked, abused for being who I am, which is normal for everybody. We are abused for being ourselves because the system is designed for followers and conformists. And if you're not that, and newsflash, no one's identity conforms. No one's identity folds into a mold. That is only a reflection of our fear. Needless to say, I stepped way out of that. And I realized that in order to be authentically true to myself, I had to completely divorce the system, which I did. And I have been so much happier for it. So I live outside of the system. I answer to no one because I have my own authority. I have higher standards than our government. I have higher ethics than most religions. And this is not bragging. This is pride. This is very much me realizing that I don't need a religion or a deity. I don't need a government to tell me what's right and wrong. I do that for myself because my identity, my ethic, my beliefs are that strong, which makes me incompatible with the system. That being said, I want to talk today about authority. This is a topic that I have been throwing around for months now, and I have really, it's in the back of my mind every time I talk about anything where I'm going, I really need to talk about authority. I really need to talk about authority. I really need to dig into authority. So this is me finally digging into authority. When we are born with two things only: our identity and our authority. Our authority is immediately taken away from us and transferred over to a caregiver, a mother or a father in most cases. And I know that there are many people out there who do not have mothers and fathers. I know there are many people out there who were raised by grandparents, aunts, uncles, religious leaders, corporations, governments. For the sake of vocabulary and time, I'm going to say mother and or father or parent, but I am referring to all caregivers. There is somebody in your life who had your authority for the first 10 to 15 to 30 years of your life, who probably still has your authority. So unless you are Mowgli living in the Indian jungles, unless you are Romulus and Remus in the Roman Empire suckling the teats of wolves, you don't have authority from the time you are born to the time you are like 15 years old, most likely. I am speaking to the general majority of people. I have learned that people love to argue and bicker, and that if you are inconsistent in the slightest, there's going to be somebody who's insecure, who needs to stand up and defend and say their piece because they have unresolved issues with fear and authority, which comes back to authority. So when we are born, that authority immediately passes to a caregiver. And our identity is left to us, but we're infants. We have yet to learn how to communicate ourself to other people. And our brains, our beautiful, beautiful human brains, immediately go to work learning all the forms of communication. It's amazing. Every animal in the world does this. Cats do it with their owners. It's amazing. Dogs do it. It's this, I am around this thing, this entity that I have to communicate. So it immediately goes to work on the communication center to develop methods of contact and communication to simplify its existence. And in order to know your relation to everything else in the world, you first have to know who you are so you can determine your relativity to it. And that is us. That is what we are designed to do, is to determine who and what you are so we can define ourself, so we can understand our relativity to what is out there. It's beautiful. It's absolutely amazing. So this is our goal from birth to, hopefully, if everything goes right, 15, 20 years old, where you are on this massive self-exploration journey of figuring out who you are, what your loves are. But there's a problem. The moment your parents receive a little stick that says they are pregnant, their brains immediately launch into the fantasy realm. And they think of all what it's going to be like to be a parent. And the first thing they think of or imagine is a mini me. Now, this is the problem with mini me. The reason why we cling to the concept of mini me so much is because we are living vicariously through our children to do the one thing we desired more than anything else in the world, which is to be ourselves, because that was taken away from us. It was absolutely taken away from us. Every person in the world wanted to be themselves, but abuse, fear, and safety took that away from us, so that we had to choose between who we are, what we are, and the self versus safety. I dive really deep into this topic later on and in all my other locations, but for now, we're going to shelve that. So when a person is conceived, when a parent finds out that they're having a child, the first thing they do is say, this is my opportunity to finally see and embrace my ideal self. And they get excited. The problem is you have your own identity. It's already forming as you're being developed in the womb. When you're born, it's already in place. It is your job to figure it out. It's already there. You're born with it. You need to figure it out. You need to explore. You need to taste. You need to go on adventures and figure out who you are. But society has conditioned your parents to do things a different way. And their number one conditioning rule is to condition you to conform. And that programming is so diehard in their brains that it trumps everything else, because it is fear-based, because it is safety-based. So you are born, and the first thing that happens is your parents go to work to make sure you are structured around the system, because they are afraid, because they absolutely had their safety compromised when they decided to be individuals, and that didn't work out for them. So the first lesson they learned was to not be an individual. And it starts with something subtle of, we don't do that. No, we don't do that. And it could be something simple as, we don't use those words because that doesn't relate to our culture. We don't listen to that kind of music or wear our hair that way because that's not our culture or tradition. Racism and prejudice take place in that. I was born in a white supremacist town where anything that was not white culture was banned. So there was one day I was 12 and I wore my hair down like this, and I loved it. I loved it. I had like little stringy bits, and my mother screamed at me, "Don't wear your hair like that. You look like Michael Jackson." And that was the first time I ever heard about Michael Jackson, and I had no idea who this person was. And I never heard about him again until he died. True story. True story. Yeah. I did not know anything else about Michael Jackson until his death day. And I was sitting inside work and the news was blaring and there, Michael Jackson is dead. And I went, who the hell is Michael Jackson? And the entire room just went. And they looked at me. And I went, what? The only reference I had of Michael Jackson was that one day when I was 12 years old and I wore my hair down like this. And my mother said, don't wear your hair like that. You look like Michael Jackson. So, and then I went to Wikipedia and I Googled Michael Jackson and I literally referenced it to YouTube videos. So I read through, it took me days to do this, where I would just read through these articles about this is his life, this is his music that he wrote. And every time they referenced a song, I stopped the article, I went over to YouTube, and then I watched the video and I assessed it. Now I have 15 years of music theory and a lifetime of dance under me, ballet, jazz. So I get done and this is what I do. In conclusion, this is what I had to say about Michael Jackson. He's just Bob Fosse meets Gene Kelly. What's the big deal? I was not popular. But yeah, he's just Bob Fosse and Gene Kelly in one. I'm not impressed, really. Like, Queen is so much better. Like Freddie Mercury, that man. Okay, now focusing, getting back on point. The point is that was my identity being crammed down into a little box. Because according to white culture, God forbid, we act like we're black. That's my mom. That's my family. That's what I was raised with. I don't agree with it. That is not a reflection of my opinion. That's the garbage that was crammed down my throat. But wearing my hair like that was actually a reflection of my identity. And it went on to shape me into this thing that, yeah. So there are little things, subtle things that our parents do and say to us that absolutely stamp us down and completely throw away our identity. In the meantime, our authority is all the way over there. And they have this authority. And this authority, having authority over your children, is a power trip. It very much is a power trip. When you have parents who feel insecure and suddenly they have the authority to control this human being, oh my God, that is juice to the brain. Every one of us has narcissism inside of us. Narcissism, the condition, narcissistic personality disorder, is when the narcissist inside of us gets activated and turned on and maxed out. So you have this little bit of narcissism. That's ego. That's all it is. It's just ego. But when that ego becomes magnified and blown out of perspective, that immediately turns on the narcissistic personality disorder, and it keeps it on, or it keeps it on a switch so that certain triggers turn it on and turn it off. But all narcissistic personality disorder is our ego. That is all it is. And we all have ego inside of us. And sometimes that comes out, and sometimes we keep it in check, and sometimes we don't. But if we're not aware of ego, it can get out of hand. So when you are born, your authority is passed over to your parents. Your parents take that authority and it turns on their ego. Nothing fuels ego more than authority. Really, it's like a power juice. So our parents are given authority, and they're supposed to filter it back to us as we age, so that by the time you're 12, we're supposed to be given a little bit of authority. Much like an allowance, a financial allowance, so we can learn how to manage money, we're also supposed to learn how to manage authority and power. But we're not given this. Our parents hoard it because their egos are turned on. Now, when we hit 15, 16, 17, we're supposed to be filtered a little bit more of that authority. Instead, our parents hoard it. In severe cases where they're narcissistic themselves and their ego has turned on, they keep filtering it to us more and more. Or I'm sorry, the reverse of that. They hold on to it more and more, and they keep it from us. And what ends up happening is now you enter into a power trip between you and your parents. My cat decided now is the time to play with a screw. Kitty. Come on. So the authority, the fight for authority awakens when a child hits their preteen years, and that's just it. Is it becomes about a power struggle, a fight for control over who gets the authority. It belongs to the child, and there's a whole lot of sources out there. There's a whole lot of information that tell you who gets what authority, what you should do, how you should parent a teenager, and there's a balance to that. And I really need to do something about my cat, because this is not helping my ADHD at all. So I can't imagine what it's doing for you. I need to lock the cat up or something when I do this. That being said, when the authority is now in this power struggle, it becomes a battle of who's going to trump who. And you have parents who start screaming, and the child, who already has their identity taken away from them and forced away from them, is completely separated from their identity. Now they're seeking their authority. They're already feeling suppressed. The id is already wide awake screaming, hey, what about me? And that's where you see the teenage angst. That's where you see the teenage fighting, and that's where you see the teenage rebellion. That's what we call it. That, in my opinion, is gaslighting. When you take a teenager and you say, well, that's just teenage mood, or that's just there is nothing more honest. Hold your tongue before you start arguing about lies. There is nothing more honest than a teenager's subconscious mind. There is nothing more honest. You want to know what kind of a parent you are? Look at how much your child rebels. Your child will rebel in literally proportion to how controlling and egotistical you are. The more the child acts out, that's because that's how controlling you are. 3 children, like 3 children. My oldest, my middle child was the one who rebelled the most. He was the one who was under the most restriction. My 15-year-old has, if anything, I'm too lax with my 15-year-old, my youngest daughter. And it's funny because I do evaluations with my children. How do you think my parenting is? Like, I'll sit down and I will literally ask them to evaluate my parenting. And my daughter has said to me, I wish you were more strict with how I do my homework and when I do my homework. I need that structure. She has said this to me. And I will say, like, school year just ended. We're going to do it this way. Yeah, he's not going to stop. We're going to try it this way. He's a very playful cat. This is midnight. Sorry for the interruption. This is not helping me either. And I'm probably going to I'm going to stop and redo this.